What's going on, everyone? So just got done with a strength training workout, and I had these ideas flowing through my mind, and so I thought I'd turn on the camera and start to record and maybe just have a little stream of consciousness conversation, and we'll see if this video actually makes it onto YouTube. So recent current event, there was the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I watched like 15 minutes of it in the middle part and then went to sleep. Next day, I go into my graduate lab, and it's about 5 or 6 of us, and it's a psychology lab, and so, we like to talk about the psychology of current events, and we started discussing some of the unconscious mechanisms going on with the specific candidates themselves, as well as perhaps what's going on in the collective unconscious of society. And I brought up that I only watched a few minutes of the debate, and the professor was like, now I respect this professor. I think he's going to be a great mentor. I'm only 3 weeks into my master's program, so I haven't really developed like a strong relationship with a lot of these people. But from what I can tell, although we have different views and different beliefs, I think that we have a foundational alignment in terms of moral beliefs. And then at the more surface level fringes, we have, differences of agreement, but that's what makes great dialogue, and that's what allows you to learn and really hone your thinking. So I respect this man, and I'm looking forward to continuing working with him over the next year. One of the things that he started to highlight was just the difference between explicit and implicit values. And so people will say explicitly that they value X, Y, and Z, but if you, from one perspective, measure where they spend their time, then that could be a measure of their implicit values, and you see that they actually implicitly value, ABC. Now, I have a problem with that measurement because I think about fathers or parents who migrate and work in different countries and leave their kids behind. Well, most of their time is spent away from their kids, but I'm pretty sure they still value their kids more than their job. So I don't agree with that form of measurement. But anyway, this professor was saying, this debate in this election is perhaps the most important thing in your life, but you went to sleep. And we continued to hash out that conversation, but it just made me think it was real indicative to the degree that I can generalize of some of these academics, and I didn't get the opinions of my peers, but that was an interesting point, and I have seen that type of thinking with some of my peers as we're talking about political discussions. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's talk about the notions that, the debate is one of the most impactful or influential events of my life, or even one of the most influential or impactful current events that's going on right now. So that would be one notion, and then we could replicate the same framework for the election. You know what, let's just put them together. The idea that these two things are some of the most impactful events that are going to happen in my life. In my mind, we all have a circle of influence. We're limited creatures. Human beings are limited creatures. We only have so much time, so much energy, so much attention. And so we have to rank order our priorities. We want to take care of ourselves first, typically, and then we love other people. And if we're fortunate enough, we can be very sacrificial, and to the point where I'm sure many parents would sacrifice themselves for their kids. And so at some point, as you grow and mature and you expand your circle of influence and you do the things that you want to do or that you were meant to do, at some point you still maintain your locus of control, and you take responsibility for what you can, but you understand that the most important thing in the world is not you. It's probably your relationships with other people, or it's other people themselves. So look, everyone has a limited circle of influence. Now, I want to juxtapose that with this narrative that this election is going to be a catalyst for the end of the world, perhaps, or at least the end of democracy. And that's the narrative that's being pushed out there that I hear from many of my peers, particularly on one side, saying that if Donald Trump gets elected, then it's going to be the end of democracy. But I'm sure that there are people on the other side that say that, if Kamala gets elected, it'll be the end of democracy. And those two ideas, for me, I really struggled to reconcile together. Some of us, and I include myself in this category, like, we struggle to do what we want to do, or to stop doing what we know we shouldn't be doing. Like, we can't even get our own houses in order. Yet we worry about something so complex and complicated and large scale and grand as the end of democracy. And I'm not trying to say that no single individuals can make an impact as large as that, as obviously history knows this or demonstrates this. What I am saying is that we have to have a priority in how we go about focusing on our lives. And I worry that we're flipping things. And I worry that many of us who don't take care of ourselves physically and mentally, we aren't excelling in our career or our job. We aren't educating ourselves. We aren't taking care of our family and our fiance. We don't want to have kids, and that's a personal thing that I can maybe talk about in a different video. We don't take care. We don't set our own house in order, but we're so fixated on the world. And there's a relationship between the individual and the world, but I just feel like we have it backwards, where we focus on these grand scale narratives that we really have no idea about. Like, I can't begin to comprehend all of the economic and political and social and geopolitical factors that go into the collapse of a country. And that's, just me. Like, I'm not educated in that. I spend a lot of my time reading psychology and philosophy, and that's what I'm interested in. And I have history books I'm going to get to probably in a few years, but right now I'm very interested in my little niche. But there is a relationship between the individual and these large-scale, complex systems. I think both Dostoevsky and Martin Luther King talk about how the individual really is the locus of control for societies. Martin Luther King has this quote. It's something like, "Humans are intertwined in a garment of destiny. What affects one affects all. And I can't be everything I ought to be until you're everything you ought to be. And you can't be everything you ought to be until I'm everything I ought to be." And I believe that to be true. And so as I'm living my life with my limited capabilities and in my circle of influence, my way of ensuring that I'm doing my part in society is taking care of myself, and then taking care of those people who will allow me to take care of them, like my family, my mother, my brother, my nephews, my sister-in-law, my fiance. And as I develop in competency, hopefully, I will expand that circle of influence, and I can hopefully do more good. But right now, I am not at the scale where I can have an impact on, the collapse of the country. And I don't believe in that narrative anyway. Obviously, you vote and you do your part. And maybe if you're politically interested, maybe you do go out and you're trying to convince people. But just the notion that because I didn't watch the full 90-minute debate, that's indicative that I don't care, or that the large societal principles that I do care about aren't actually valuable to me. Like, I care about free speech, I care about protection of women, protection of children, I care about decentralized authority, I care about preservation of free markets. But just because I don't watch a full debate that really wasn't even, from my understanding, from what I've heard, really wasn't even about any of those issues, that does not mean that I'm implicitly, I implicitly or unconsciously don't value some of those things. And what I want to talk about here, what I want to talk about here is really just the hierarchical structuring that I have in my mind from those general principles down to every action that you do. And this is kind of the opposite of what I said earlier. Like many of us start with these grand scale visions for the world, these kind of utopian visions, and how we can fix fatherlessness, and we can beat alcoholism, and everyone can have as much money as they need, and we can fix the housing crisis. But it just doesn't go anywhere, because these grand scale ideas don't get. There's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear that I recommend everyone read. And these grand scale ideas don't get traced back down to, okay, what individual action can you do today and tomorrow and for the rest of your life that will help tilt society or just yourself and your circle of influence towards those grand visions. And so for me, let's pick something. I don't know. I want society to be better, right? That's a very, very grand scale goal. To the degree that I want society to be better, I don't want to contribute as a burden to society. Okay, there's many ways that I can contribute to be a burden to society. One of the ways would be if I didn't take care of myself physically and mentally in terms of my health. Now, it doesn't go as soon as I'm unhealthy, all of a sudden the entire society suffers, but my circle of influence suffers. And you can just draw you can draw a somewhat a line or a relationship from, you think of society, you think of America, the country, and then you have state and city, town, neighborhood, your family, what have you. Again, given your limitations, and for me specifically, still staying on that example, part of the way that I've conceptualized my contribution to society is by taking care of myself. I take care of myself so that way my fiance doesn't have to, and now she can focus on herself. And now her and I are together, and we have more capacity, eventually we will, to have kids. And then our kids will be able to, at some point in the future, add more to society. And then as her and I are continuing to develop ourselves and mature, our circle of influence will expand. But you can't just jump straight from, here I am today, and I'm going to care about the collapse of democracy. Like, what are your habits that you are doing right now, every single day, that is going to make your life better, at least in the sense to where you're not becoming a burden on society? And it's like, shouldn't we master those small steps first before jumping to something so with such a grand scale? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have those discussions and whatnot, but I just disagree with the notion that I disagree with many things that I'm seeing. One, the narrative that it's going to be a collapse of democracy after this election. Two, this notion that if you are not constantly obsessing over some of these large-scale visions, then you don't care about it. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think, and this is what, if I remember correctly, this is what Christ says in the Sermon on the Mount, right? You aim at the kingdom of heaven, and then you focus on the day, okay? So set your visions and set your goals. Like, think about as far out as you can, but be realistic. Most people can only think out like 3 or 5 years. So it's like, what do you want your life to be like? Because you also need to bound yourselves in thinking about what you can control. And so you shouldn't, unless you're someone with so much power, maybe you shouldn't think about how you want society to be in the next 10 years. Maybe you should think about, how do you want your life to be? How do you want your family's life to be over the next 3 years? Okay, set that vision. And then backtrack to the granular habits and actions that you can do every single day to make sure that you can make that vision a reality. And my worry is just that we're forgetting that last part. We're thinking too big, and we're thinking way out of our capacity, at least from what I can see. And I think that we would be in a better place, or at least we'd be going in a better direction, if people could set a reasonable goal for what they would like to have happen in their life, and then focus on their habits and just focus on the day and do the things that you know that you're supposed to do and stop doing the things that you know that you shouldn't do. Gonna end it there. Thank you guys for listening.